Good point.
All right, I think, should we start?
Yeah.
All right. And we are live. So, hey everyone. Hey everyone, welcome to our 7th Travel Inspiration webinar. Nice to see you all here. We are so glad you're here with us today. I am Jasmine from JoinMyTrip, and I will be one of your hosts for tonight. So we host a travel inspiration webinar every 2 weeks, and our goal is to give you guys ideas on great destinations around the world that you can travel to once Corona is over. And so by the end of this webinar, you should feel more familiar with some of these specific locations. And for today's travel destination, we want to take you to one of my home countries, Thailand. It's known for its amazingly beautiful tropical beaches and royal palaces. And I just can't wait to share my knowledge with you all. And of course, I am here with one of my co-hosts today, Emily, and she has been to Thailand a couple of times as well. And I'll let Emily tell you a little bit about it herself and why she is here to share some tips and tricks about Thailand as well.
Yes, so happy to be here. This is my first time co-hosting one of these, and I'm super excited to share stories with you. I have been personally to Thailand twice before, and once with my family, and my little sister went backpacking there as well, and she gave me some cool tips to share with you as well.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here as well, Emily, but what do you say? Should we find out how many have visited Thailand before?
Yes, I am so curious to know.
So let's do a quick poll to see how many of you have been to Thailand.
Seems pretty half-half for now. All right, so most of you have not been, but a lot of you have already been. So that's so cool. You can start planning your next trip with us.
Next slide, please. Yes, so before we start, we would like to share some house rules with you. We would like to remind you guys to keep yourself muted during this webinar. If you're not sure how, you will find the mute button in the left corner, but no worries, you can also ask your questions at the end of this webinar to myself and Emily in our Q&A section. We also want you to please use the chat respectfully. Of course, you can also share your feelings at any time. For that, just use the reaction buttons. You find them by clicking the button in the bottom row in the middle.
So why don't we give the reactions a try right now? Is everyone ready to learn more about Thailand?
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome.
Yes, certainly.
So now that we went over some rules, what is JoinMyTrip? So for the ones that are joining us for the first time today, we would like to give a short introduction on JoinMyTrip, who we are and why we're putting on this webinar. So Emily, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about JoinMyTrip?
Of course. So guys, have you ever been faced with the challenge of wanting to go on a specific trip and you were super excited and couldn't wait to plan, but then couldn't find anyone to go with you because they either didn't have time or didn't like the trip and you ended up just not going at all? We realized that a lot of people were facing this challenge, and that's why we created JoinMyTrip. So this platform is a place where we connect trip leaders and trip mates. And the trip leaders are the ones who organize and plan their trips. And then they publish their travel plans on our platform. And then interested trip mates would then request to join their adventure. And also, side note, as a trip leader, you can actually earn money for traveling.
So guys, really, whatever your budget is, wherever you choose to go, whatever type of travel activity, you can be sure that there are so many different options and opportunities out there. So you get to decide whether you'd like to be the one organizing or simply just want to pack your bags and join along. So currently, our community consists of over 140,000 like-minded travelers, and it's still growing. Till this day, we represent the world's biggest community of trustworthy travelers.
Right. And that's really why we're putting together these events so that we can have this place to connect with fellow travel lovers and empower you guys to explore together. And if you'd like to know more, feel free to check out our website. We will post the link in the chat for you guys now. Okay, Jasmine, do you want to give our audience an overview about what we'll be talking about tonight?
Of course. So today we are introducing you to Thailand, of course. If you like beaches, you're definitely in the right place being here because Thailand has more beaches than you can count. With over 2,000 miles of coastline and 8,000 islands, you won't be short of choices. So you might be wondering, what can you do in Thailand? So first off, we have island hopping, because what can be a more perfect activity than island hopping in Thailand? You can easily take ferries from one island to the other for a cheap price. And we will also learn more about the many islands later on in the presentation.
Yes, a perfect spot for travelers who want to see a lot, but with a budget. And what if you want to see some typical Thai things, Jasmine? What's next?
Floating markets, a truly local custom that you wouldn't see anywhere in Europe. It's such a sight to see, especially when you ride in a boat in the middle of the market. You can rent a boat and a so-called pilot that will take you around the main parts of the floating market. And it's such an amazing experience. And the food is definitely to die for. What else is there to do, Emily?
So besides this, let's go back into the ocean and go scuba diving or snorkeling, because you can't go to Thailand without trying at least snorkeling. Plus, Thailand has the perfect blue oceans for that. So don't forget to take your underwater camera with you as well. And then, of course, we have the stunning monuments and temples that you can find here. If you're lucky enough to visit when a service is taking place, count yourself very fortunate. And then we have the night markets, of course. They are such a must see. You have all the great products and fresh food, and it's going to be at night. So with vibrant, amazing, beautiful city lights. Wow, I really want to see that as well. I haven't seen that yet. And then last but not least, this is for people who want some more action, some Muay Thai kickboxing. So it's Thailand's national sport, and it's also known as the art of 8 limbs because the fighters use their fists, elbows, knees, and their shins. Almost all major cities in Thailand have a ring, but the best fights will be in Bangkok, specifically in the Lumpini Stadium. All right, moving on to food. Jasmine, what are your favorite dishes in Thailand?
Yes, so let's begin with the best, which is Thai street food. It's very yum, yet so simple and cheap. One of the most simple street food dishes that you can find, and also the best, is sticky rice with grilled meat on a stick. It's a common thing in Thailand that for lunch, Thai students would go out to buy sticky rice with meat on a stick. Although, pro tip though, only take the street food that's freshly cooked and not those that have been lying around for an hour in the pollution and people walking by every second. Be safe and buy food directly off the grill to avoid food poisoning. So what other things should they keep in mind, Emily, when it comes to Thai food?
Yeah, so other than that, good tip is also please be careful of the spiciness because Thai people love them some spicy food. But usually in restaurant menus, they would add 1 to 3 chili peppers next to the dish to show how spicy it is. But most times, even just 1 chili pepper is way too spicy for a lot of tourists. So avoid 3 or more pepper dishes at all costs if you have a sensitive tongue like me. All right, next food is pad thai, of course. It's one of Thailand's most famous dishes and a real go-to for tourists again. It's fried noodles with, it's made with shrimp or chicken, but also the vegetarian option is super popular.
Yes, as a Thai myself, I can very much recommend trying a traditional pad Thai when in Thailand, because you can't go wrong with pad Thai. And then next up, we have the famous papaya salad, which in Thailand is also known as som tam. Again, this is very spicy. My mom, who is a Thai, would always say it's not som tam if it's not spicy. It's made from shredded unripe papaya, and Thai people love it because of the balance of spicy, sweet, sour, and salty. You will always find papaya salad in every Thai party. You can be sure of that. It's incredibly healthy and delicious. And if you want to go to the real traditional route, Thai people usually add in plara, which is fermented fish. So tourists often think it's very smelly, but it's not a real Thai som tam if you don't want in some plara. So what's next on our list, Emily?
Next is another spicy food. It's spicy shrimp soup. So this is truly an Asian comfort food. It's of course spicy, rich, it's curry based, it's a broth, and it's made with fresh shrimp and vegetables. And it's usually made also with coconut milk. Looks super good.
I love spicy shrimp soup. And then after drowning yourself with several heavily spiced dishes, it's time for dessert. So we have mango sticky rice, which is a dish made by pairing two seemingly unlikely ingredients. So mango slices and sweet glutinous rice. But when eaten together, the sourness of the mango is gently balanced out by the coconut milk infused sticky rice, offering kind of like a mild, creamy flavor similar to rice pudding, and it's good. So if you love mango and coconut, this is a must try. And then next up, as for the national drink, we have sabai sabai, which is also known as the Thai welcome drink. And sabai actually means comfortable or relaxed in Thai. The drink features Mekong, a unique liquor from Thailand, and it is often referred to as the official drink of Thailand. And it's quite fascinating because if you're seeking a refreshing and easy cocktail to mix up, then look no further.
Okay, now enough about food because I haven't had dinner yet and wow, my stomach is screaming. Jasmine, what do we need to take into account before going to Thailand regarding infrastructure?
Yes, so when it comes to accommodation, hostels and hotels are widely offered wherever you go in Thailand. Of course, you can also rent out an Airbnb, but that is usually the least common option when traveling to Thailand. Plus, the hotels and hostels are often affordable to everyone. So it is very accessible to all. Then, of course, if you have more money to spare, you can stay in resorts, which are usually a tiny bit more expensive than hotels, but not by much. Resorts are also the most common option for accommodation amongst Thai when it comes to local traveling. Where would you recommend they stay, Emily?
Well, it would depend if you're going with family, friends, or on a tight budget. There's something for everyone. My family and I went to this really nice hotel, and it was much cheaper than in Europe for the same number of stars. And my little sister went to a couple of hostels, and she said the experience was amazing. Cheap prices, clean living spaces, and also meeting all the other travelers and backpackers was also a big plus.
Thank you for sharing, Emily. Then we move on to transportation. When you are traveling inside the city, one of the experiences that you all should try is to catch a ride with a tuk-tuk, which is pretty much the same as a taxi. It's a fun way to get around the city. Have you ever been on a tuk-tuk, Emily?
Oh my God, yes, of course. It's so fun. But we also have those in the Philippines where I'm from, so I'm kind of cheating.
So yeah, do catch a ride on the tuk-tuks, not in the Philippines though, but in Thailand. So if you're traveling far, Thailand does have many small airports as well. So you can be sure that most of the places have an airport. So do make use of the airplane sometimes as they can be cheaper as well. But another option and most recommendable option is to get yourself a rental car throughout your whole trip in Thailand. It's the best and most effective way to travel around Thailand. Locals do it. Of course, public transportation is always available, but the trains and local buses are usually quite dirty and buses don't even have bus stops sometimes. That is talking about the local public transportation that only runs within the city. So you would press the button and you get off there. Sometimes the public transportation isn't that reliable and there's no bus stop. So you really kind of have to know where to get off. But you can also take long distance buses, which are also known as VIP buses. It has been improved and geared towards tourists, and one of the best VIP buses ever. It's the best way to travel around Thailand if you don't want to rent a car. You can buy the tickets directly from the bus terminal or then book it online through various websites. Of course, a ferry is also always available as well when you're traveling from island to island. So now that you guys know a little more about the infrastructure, Emily, why don't you tell us how much will their trip cost?
Let's see. So prices really depend on where you go. It will be different between Bangkok and other cities, but we found some average prices to show you guys. So first, an inexpensive restaurant meal would cost about 69 baht, which is 1.81 euros. And then for two people in a mid-range restaurant with a three-course meal would average on around 700 baht, so around 18 euros. And also, the tap water is unsafe to drink in Thailand, so be careful because old habits die hard. But buying water is not expensive there at all. A 1.5-liter bottle in any 7-Eleven store you would find anywhere would cost less than 50 cents. So also, to cut down on plastic, look for free water refills in some hotels. Also, you can find water refill machines on the street. And then a local beer would cost between 1 and 2 euros. Imported beers, though, could go up to 3.50, but are cheaper if you buy them in the market, for example. And as for cocktails, if you go to a really nice bar, it could go up to 15 euros. But then that's the really expensive bars, but the average would stay always under 10 euros. So now we know what to eat, how to get around, and have info about the budget. Let's go over a few more tips before going, Jasmine.
Yes, so we are going to share them now. First off, we have the visa, which Thailand is quite open to tourists. So most nationalities can travel to Thailand for up to 30 days without requiring a visa. And then the next one is to get a sakyan tattoo. This is for the more adventurous. It's a traditional Thai tattoo done by a monk with a metal rod, and they are said to be blessed with magical powers. So yeah, a much more interesting story than getting a tattoo in your hometown at a tattoo shop, right?
Totally.
It's very spiritual and Thais do take it seriously. However, it is said that for the tattoo to actually work, you have to give up a certain thing in your life. For example, never drinking alcohol ever again.
Yeah, and apparently also it's the monk that decides what you need protection for, and the tattoo will be based on this. But you can, of course, ask them to change it, but it's the monk that does it.
Yes, and then next up, there is a lot of taxi scams out there in Thailand, which you may have heard. So how to avoid them? One of the most common ways to avoid that is to know a tiny bit of Thai, and sometimes that won't actually even help you because even lost Thais visiting for the first time, for example, in Bangkok, even they get scammed. We have a saying in Thailand that yes, the taxi drivers do have cameras, but the camera is usually in their pocket. But you can also download the Grab Taxi mobile app to get around safely, which is most likely your best option. So if you were to use a taxi, make sure to order it through Grab. What are some other tips?
So then you guys can also buy a local SIM card. This would be a good idea also, so you can stay connected all the time. Thailand has an amazing 5G network now, and instead of always searching for a place with free Wi-Fi, you can make your life easier and just buy a super cheap SIM card. And the best one is with great coverage is from AIS.
Yes, and then for peak season, the peak season is between the months of November to April, and that is also usually when the weather is the best and the warmest. And the off season, the tourist numbers usually begin dropping rapidly a couple of weeks after Songkran, which is the traditional Thai New Year celebration that ends on April 15th. Not only is April typically the hottest month in Thailand, but monsoon season begins shortly after as well. So usually sometime in May. So off season is usually between the months of May to September. What other tips should they keep in mind, Emily?
So another tip is also to bring your own medicine, because sometimes it could be difficult to find the right medicine when you're abroad because the names are totally different and maybe the pharmacist or the doctor doesn't speak your language. So that's a good tip. And then also is to bring warm clothes. Yes, it sounds weird for a trip to a tropical country, but Southeast Asians love them some AC. They turn the air conditioning on high all day, every day. So indoors only, of course, in buses, cinemas, in malls. So so cold, but you can also use your scarf then to cover yourself whenever you are visiting a temple, for example, which would be pretty often. And then last tip is to beware of drugs, guys. The Thai government is so serious about this, and the penalties could go up to death, but that's for extreme cases. My dad's friend, for example, got 4 years in prison, in a Thai prison, for a tiny amount on his person. And also sometimes people can plant the drugs in your bag, so keep your belongings very close to you.
Yes, this is something my parents keeps telling me about, and to never accept to watch over anyone's luggage either, because sometimes you can be framed. Okay, so now that we have all the tips, you're probably wondering how is the current situation in Thailand regarding the coronavirus is. So currently all travelers arriving in Thailand must quarantine for 14 days, and Phuket will be the first destination in Thailand to reopen to vaccinated travelers without quarantining from July 1st, if all goes well.
And also masks are worn at all times in public, both indoors and out. And those who don't wear masks can face high fines. And then lastly, the entertainment venues in the whole country have been ordered to close. Now we'll make this a bit more fun. We're going to start a true or false game about Thailand. We'll be giving you some fun facts about Thailand, and let's see how many of you guys know these. So first off, I will be telling you guys the facts using the reactions buttons. You will choose whether it's true or false. So if it's true, use the green check emoji that you can find, and if it's false, use the red cross. And Jasmine will then be clearing up whether it's actually true or false. So let's get started. So first off, Thailand has never changed its country name. It's always been known as Thailand. True or false, guys?
It's false. So Thailand was known as Siam until 1939.
Right. And then Siamese cats are native to Thailand. True or false?
So it's true, derived from the Wichianmat landrace, one of several varieties of cats native to Thailand.
And then next, many Thai people wear double underwear. True or false?
So most of you voted false, but it's actually true. So in Thailand, it's illegal to leave the house without underwear on. So one of the more unusual laws in the country.
Indeed. Okay, next is if there is Thai currency found on the floor, people will ignore it. True or false?
So false, but it is illegal to step on Thai currency.
And then lastly, driving topless will land you in jail if you're a man. True or false?
I don't know.
This is actually true.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, the law doesn't specify this rule for women, but I guess it's because it's kind of common sense, right? But yeah, be careful when you rent a car in Thailand. So many tourists have actually fallen foul of this law, believing the beachy, relaxed attitude would also fly smoothly to the rest of the country. But nope.
Nope.
All right, now that you guys know some fun facts about Thailand, we'll actually be giving you some important Thai customs that you need to know before going. So the first one is, as a woman, you are not allowed to touch monks. Monks are very respected in Thailand. They have made a vow and they would be sinning if they came into any form of contact with a woman. And then next is, do not touch people's heads. The head is a sacred part of a person's body in Thailand. It's the highest part of your body, therefore also the most respected. And then we also have the next one, which is leave the shrines alone. If you've ever been to Thailand, you'll most likely see similar type of shrines all around Thailand, whether it be in restaurants or randomly in the middle of a forest. But you guys should probably leave the shrines alone, because in Thailand, it is believed that the shrines hold spiritual powers. You will often see small pieces of food or drinks as well on the shrines, and it's for the spirits to drink and eat from. So if you mess with the shrines or play with the dolls within the shrines, it is said that bad things can happen to you.
Ooh, beware. Okay, next custom is the clothes that should cover your knees and your shoulders. Of course, Thailand is slowly transitioning now, especially in big cities. You will notice that people don't really do it, but when you are in smaller cities, it's best to wear clothes that cover those parts of your body, especially when visiting a temple. And then lastly is to avoid talking about the royal family. It's best not to ask the Thais about the royal family, because if anyone is caught talking negatively about them in public, they can face time in jail. Yep.
Now that you have all the basic information, hopefully that you need for traveling to Thailand, we want to introduce you to some specific places you could visit. And so we will share a Thailand itinerary that was created by one of our trip leaders, Christopher, plus some extra stops we would like to share with you as well.
So, first of all, let's get a geographical orientation of Thailand. So it's located in the heart of Southeast Asia, and the red bubbles you can see here show the itinerary of the trip we will present to you, which will start in the capital, Bangkok. So the trip starts in Bangkok, but you won't be staying there for long, because you will immediately be taking a plane off to Chiang Rai from the Bangkok airport, but don't worry, because we will come back to the city. So we will be going up north of the country, which I think is the most interesting part of the country to visit. Chiang Rai is over 700 kilometers from Bangkok, and it lies in the middle of the mountain landscape of the Golden Triangle, and also it's the northernmost provincial capital of Thailand. And you can also find the numerous members of the Akha, Karen, Lisu, and Mio Hill tribes that live there. So first stop to see in Chiang Rai is the White Temple, or Wat Rong Kum. It's one of the most famous places to visit in northern Thailand. Most people actually only travel to Chiang Rai to be able to visit it. I mean, look how beautiful it is. It's my background. And now on to another colorful temple. It's the Blue Temple, or Wat Rong Xuan Ten. You have probably guessed it from its name. It's especially famous for being blue, and it's also blue inside. Crazy.
Yes, and next up is a nighttime activity, the night bazaar. It's prettier, Emily, yes. It's prettier than those of Bangkok or Chiang Mai, and the souvenirs are also cheaper. You will find there many stands selling clothes, jewelry, or wooden objects. And in the center of the evening market, you can also eat in a very nice wooden restaurant. And then we move on to a little bit of nature now. So the Singha Park, it's named after one of the most famous bears in Thailand, and it's located about 6 kilometers from the White Temple. So the entrance is free, but you will have to pay for the zip line, the bikes, or to take the tourist train.
And now another beautiful, colorful monument is the Baan Dam Museum, which is also known as Black Temple, for the many black small houses decorated with crocodile skins, furs, and even bones, for example. And then lastly, we bring you to the Kunkorns waterfall, which is 70 meters high. And to get there, you will need a car, and then walk up to the river along the road, which would take you about 30 minutes through the bamboo forest. But don't you have any tips for Kunkorns waterfall, Jasmine?
Yes, so I suggest you plan to spend around 2 hours there, the time to make the round trip, to take pictures in the forest, and to stop a bit to enjoy the freshness of the waterfall. Swimming is allowed, but the water is pretty cold, so do keep that in mind. And also be careful that the site closes at 4:30 p.m. So you should go there quite early, and entrance and parking is actually free. So next we go to Chiang Mai, which is a 3-hour drive from Chiang Rai. So Chiang Mai is the largest and culturally most important city in the northern region of Thailand and is also known as the Rose of the North because of its natural beauty. And on this trip, Christopher will show you the city and everything around Chiang Mai to see temples, elephants, various markets, and bars. And what are some things you can do in Chiang Mai, Emily?
Well, the first is Doi Sutep, which is an impressive embodiment of the Lana culture, which its origins date back almost 700 years. And then we have the Chiang Mai Night Safari, and there are 3 animal zones in this safari: the savannah, where predators are, and then the Jaguar Trail. You can also tour it via an open-sided tram or even on foot if you are brave enough, because you can also hand feed the wild animals and pet tiger cubs. And there's also a laser light show and a dancing fountain, so must see. And then we have the Wang Kum Kam, which is an underground ancient city. Here you can see stone tablets, Buddhist sculptures, and everything that's amazing to see. And a horse-led carriage is a popular way to actually enjoy the ruins. And then we have the Doi Intanon National Park, which is the highest peak in Thailand that rises over 2,500 meters above sea level. And then it's the Doi Pui Tribal Village and National Park. I'm so bad at Thai people. It's famous for its beautiful waterfalls, which you can't see on the photo here, but you can easily reach it from the main road. And one of the hottest attractions is the Hmong Tribal Village, where you can see the tribal villagers' private life, and it's super interesting. And then finally, we have the Old City temples. So Chiang Mai Old City is practically a living museum. Its narrow streets are lined with beautiful temples, old shop houses, and also it's quite small and compact, so you can easily get around on foot without really tiring yourself out. So it's cool.
Did you know that Chiang Mai is actually super great for co-working as well?
Oh, yes, true. But I don't think everyone here knows exactly what co-working is. Can you explain a bit more?
Of course. So co-working actually means sharing living and working space with other remote professionals, which you may also call digital nomads. You share a nice villa, work, cook, talk, network, and in your free time, you explore the surroundings together. This allows you to still keep your COVID-safe bubble while living in a nice place, getting to know new people, exploring a new area, and you don't even have to take any vacation days off.
Yes, and a colleague of ours, Anna, is our star co-working trip queen right now. She's been flying to and from different countries and co-working with JoinMyTrip. She also has a YouTube show actually about co-working if you're curious to know more. We'll put the link in the chat. But yes, Chiang Mai is super popular as a co-working destination because of the super low rent prices. You can live an easy, chill startup life for around $600 a month. And there are so many co-working spaces to choose from. And also there's a huge community of remote workers in the city. Plus, Chiang Mai is super famous for being a yoga destination. So you can come find your Zen in the city. And then after work, you'll have so many different types of natural landscapes to discover. And the food is amazing. What else do you need, right? Okay, so back to Christopher's trip.
So from Chiang Mai, you will drive to Sukhothai. The city center of Sukhothai was actually completely destroyed by a great fire in 1968. So all the buildings you see in this area are from more recent times. Sukhothai is located about 440 kilometers north of the capital Bangkok and in the middle of a hilly area that is used for rice cultivation. The city consists of 2 relatively separate districts. So you have the old and the new Sukhothai. Then we drive to Ayutthaya, and Ayutthaya is 70 kilometers north from the capital of Bangkok and is one of the most important parts of Thai history. The kingdom of Ayutthaya was actually burnt down by the Burmese in the 1500s, and it definitely is a place to pay your respects and have a visit to. Here, actually, you can also get a Sakyang tattoo if you wanted to. So where do we travel to next, Emily?
So next is Bangkok again. So this is a huge and modern city, as you all probably know. It's humming with awesome nightlife. It's a tropical metropolis that is also one of the most traveler-friendly cities in Asia. But didn't you live in Bangkok, Jasmine?
Yes, I was born in Bangkok and I'm definitely a big city girl. Bangkok is the perfect balance of water and land. You have the floating markets and you can go on river cruises, admire a bunch of golden temples. Bangkok really has it all, although it has changed a lot since my childhood times, but it will always be my home. And here are some more activities you can do in Bangkok as well. So the first one we have is the Grand Palace and Wat Phra Kaew. It served as the home of Thai kings and the royal court for 150 years. So Wat Phra Kaew enshrines Phra Kaew Morakot, which is the emerald Buddha. So a sacred Buddha image carved from a single block of emerald, but be careful, in normal times, the palace closes at 3:30 p.m. So pretty early for those of you who love to sleep and are late risers.
And then we have Wat Pho, which is in the Old Town. And here's where you'll find the iconic, gigantic reclining Buddha that you see in photos. And you can also get a traditional Thai massage here.
Ooh, I always love myself a traditional Thai massage. And next up, we have the Sky Bar Bangkok. You absolutely must try going here when you're in Bangkok. It's located on top of one of Bangkok's tallest building. You can see in the photo on the top right, there's a beautiful and visible golden dome. And nearby is the open air Sirocco restaurant on the 64th floor. So Sky Bar is also where you'd find some of the best live jazz in the city. What else can they do, Emily?
What else is the Chatuchak Weekend Market? It's a must-visit place for tourists also. It's so big and there's so much choice with more than 8,000 market stalls. And on a typical weekend, more than 200,000 visitors come here. And so it's open from Friday 6 p.m. to midnight, and then on the weekend until 6 p.m. only.
And then we move to Damnon Saduak floating market. Yes, and besides the markets, when in Bangkok, you absolutely have to check out this floating market. There are a lot of tourists coming out here, but you still feel the authentic Thai floating market atmosphere, and you can easily spend a whole day here eating all the delicious food and exploring around.
And then lastly, we have the Siam Niramit show, one more for the nightlife. So Siam Niramit is a spectacular show in Bangkok. It's basically a 90-minute production that captures Thailand's super rich history. It's a must-see again.
Then from Bangkok airport, you will fly to Krabi. It is on the west coast of Thailand to the Andaman Sea on a bay opposite the island of Phuket. Here on Krabi, you will find turquoise blue waters and white sand beaches, waterfalls, and more than 100 offshore islands to discover. It is the best place for relaxation, and one of the most popular activities you can do in Krabi are island hopping, snorkeling, rock climbing, sea kayaking, everything. The opportunities are limitless. So if you love activities, Krabi is definitely the place to be. And there's even an island called the James Bond Island in Phang Nga Bay, where the 1974 Bond movie, The Man with the Golden Gun, was filmed. And of course, before we move on to our next stop, Emily will present to you a trip from our trip leader, Daniel.
Yes, so for those of you who would be interested in only exploring the Thai islands, such as Koh Samui, then we also recommend checking out Daniel's trip to Thailand, where he has some fun activities such as diving in store. So the trip would be 2 weeks and would cost around 1,700 euros per person. And we will send the link in the chat so you can find out more about Daniel's trip after the webinar. And then you will be taken from a Thai water ferry to Koh Phi Phi Don, which is a group of islands in the Andaman Sea. For those of you who would like to explore the sea, Koh Phi Phi Don is very popular with divers because of the biodiversity of the coral reefs and the steep walls as well, which, by the way, go up to 24 meters deep. Crazy.
Yes, then by a ferry, again, you will travel to one of the best islands in Thailand, Koh Lanta, which consists of several islands, the two largest of which are Koh Lanta Noi and Koh Lanta Yai. PS, Koh Lanta Yai is where all the tourist action is. So if you would prefer less tourists, then you'd probably rather go to Koh Lanta Noi. So Koh Lanta is great for those who are looking for a holiday away from all the parties, and it is a little less well known than Koh Phi Phi. It is an amazing beach destination where you can find 9 beautiful beaches, and be sure to also have a visit to Koh Lanta National Park.
Yes, and it's so famous also that there is a French reality show called Koh Lanta based on the Survivor show, and where candidates are marooned and they have to fend for themselves, food and water. And it all started in Koh Lanta, and now every season has a different location, if you guys didn't know. So our next stop is Kosamui. You will be taking a boat there, and one of the best destinations, it's one of the best destinations for budget travelers. Here you will find over 15 beaches of all shapes and sizes, and Kosamui offers really great choices for nightlife entertainment as well. And plus it caters to travelers with a budget of all ranges also. And it offers also, of course, amazing island hopping opportunities to islands such as Ang Thong Park, Koh Tao, and Koh Phangan. And speaking of Koh Phangan, you should check out Shabu's trip. So Shabu is looking for 2 to 4 trip mates to join him and exploring Koh Samui and Koh Phangan in 2022, actually, for 2 weeks. And the trip costs around 1,200 euros per person. And we will also send the link in the chat so you guys can find out more about the trip after the presentation.
Yes, then we travel to the Las Vegas of Thailand, Pattaya. Here you will find the red light district and famous walking street of Thailand, where tourists from all over come here to see what all the hype is about. It definitely is an experience to see and makes for a fun night out. Or you could also just chill on Pattaya Beach. And of course, from Pattaya, you can travel back to Bangkok and board your flight back home and travel to your next destination. So that is actually it of Christopher's trip. So hopefully this trip got you all excited to possibly plan your own trip as a trip leader as well. But if some of you aren't sure on how to start, why don't you, Emily, tell everyone all the support that we have to offer?
Of course. So if you don't know where to start, we can recommend joining our next Travel Buddy webinar, which is happening on June 10th, where we will give you a lot of input and information on how to set up the perfect trip on the JoinMyTrip platform. And we'll share the link in the chat right now.
Yes, these are always so much fun to join, and so many amazing trip leaders have actually been born through these webinars. So we're looking forward to seeing you all there.
Yes, and you also have the option to check out a recording actually of the past webinars on YouTube, but of course it's not as much fun as listening to it live because you have the option to ask your questions in the end. But if you don't have time to join, you can find it under the link that we will post in the chat right now. And if you want, you can also book a 15-minute slot actually with our travel experts, and they are more than happy to share their knowledge on a one-on-one session. You can find the link in the chat. Again, we will send it. And then if all of that isn't enough, you can book a free training session with some of our lovely colleagues shown here. They'll take you through the process and answer any specific questions that you might have.
Great. Now that Emily has given you guys all the necessary information to start your trip leader adventure, you now have the opportunity to receive a 40 euro travel budget for the next trip you publish within the next 72 hours of the webinar. And how can you receive it? Simply publish your trip on the JoinMyTrip platform, and once it's published, send an email to robin@joinmytrip.com with the link of your trip. You will then receive the 40 euros after the first booking of a trip mate is made. So hopefully we will see some of you as future trip leaders soon.
Yes, I'm excited as well. The more trip leaders, the better. So do make use of the trip leader webinars, as it can help you out a lot.
And that's it. No more tips for now, although we would love some though, right, Emily?
Yes, for sure.
So before we jump into the questions and answer part, I think we need your support.
Yes, feedback also is super important to us because this way we can get an idea of how to keep improving our webinars for you in the future. We prepared a short feedback form and you could help us tremendously if you could just take 1 minute to fill it out. We'll post the link in the chat now, and everyone that fills out the form will receive the slides afterwards as well. And among all the people who gave feedback, you'll also have the chance to win a voucher for 20 euros or $24 off of your next booking with JoinMyTrip. I think that's a really good deal.
Yes, and if we made you curious about more destinations, we would recommend you to register for the Australia webinar taking place in 2 weeks. We will also send the link to join our Australia webinar in the chat for those who are interested. And 2 weeks after Australia, the next travel inspiration webinar will take place, and it will be a country of your choice. So we now have 5 countries for you to pick from. Emily will now start a poll for 30 seconds. So let's see where we are going to travel to next.
All right. Okay. It's Vietnam for now. It's between Vietnam and Spain.
Is it tied?
Okay. Nope, it's not tied. I think the winner is Vietnam. Yay.
Great.
Another Asian country.
So we're looking forward to it. And then the Vietnam webinar will then take place 4 weeks from now on.
So before we move on to the questions, we would like to introduce to you some of our upcoming events also that you might be interested in joining. The first one we have is the Travel Inspiration Morocco webinar, and you can get some trip tips and tricks. And then next we have the Travel Fails event happening on June 2nd. And here you can also come laugh with us at the silliest, weirdest, and craziest travel fails we've made while traveling. So join us in hearing and sharing some funny travel stories. And then, of course, we have the Travel Buddy Travel Talk that we mentioned earlier in the presentation. And all of our events mentioned can be found in the link that we will send you in the chat right now. Okay, Jasmine, I think we've talked enough.
Right. So since you've only had the opportunity to communicate with us per chat, now is your chance to talk with us. If there's anything you want to know, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, or write your questions in the chat, and me and Emily will try our best to answer